Mr. Speaker, this will be the fifth consecutive two-year authorization of the Water Resources Development Act since 2014, tradition revived by our former chair, Bill Schuster. And I'm grateful for the partnership of Sam Graves, the subcommittee the committee ranking member, subcommittee Grace Napolitano, chair, and subcommittee ranking member Dave Rouser for all their work in developing this historic Water Resources Development Act. This legislation builds on the successes of previous WRDA bills, moving projects from feasibility to construction. Two-year cycle is critical to addressing future water resource needs of our nation. It authorizes construction of 18 reports of the Chief of Engineers who studied and transmitted to Congress since the last WRDA bill signed into law. These Chief's reports represent thoroughly vetted, locally driven projects, highly engaged cost-share partners. Core projects cover a myriad of purposes: navigation, flood control, levees, ecosystem restoration that will benefit communities all across the United States of America. The bill also authorizes 72 new feasibility studies and direct the Corps to expedite the completion of 14 ongoing studies. It is critical that we keep our infrastructure in this nation up to date with new challenges, with severe weather events, sea level rise, and other things, and deal with the challenges that communities across this country endure. For 2 decades, I spent 2 decades, actually started longer than that, Bud Schuster, 96, trying to free up the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund. That is a tax paid by shippers, which ultimately is passed on to consumers on the value of imported goods, which have been impounded for years, totaling nearly $10 billion, where our harbors needed dredging, jetties need rebuilding. We finally got that done in 2020. That was historic. It gives the Corps more resources on the harbor side, which means they can devote a little more of their allocation to the inland waterways and to their other 40-some-odd billion dollars of backlog of critical projects across the country. It will meet the challenge of climate change and by rebuilding these navigation jetties and breakwaters to new heights, dimensions necessary for sea level rise, extreme weather, studying the impacts of coastal storms on inland flooding, particular concern of the ranking member, address future water supplies in the arid West, particular concern of, well, all of us in the West, but particularly those further south, and the chair of the subcommittee. 21st century challenges should have 21st century solutions. The Corps has been hamstrung in their ability. We've worked with other members, have heard similar concerns. We included a solution in this bill to allow the Corps to be the innovation export they need to be to address our nation's ongoing new challenges. I'm also proud it will continue building upon efforts to provide equitable project outcomes, flexibility to communities with affordability concerns. It will address the needs of economically disadvantaged, minority, rural, tribal communities in an affordable manner. In particular, the bill creates a tribal liaison position within each Corps office. The Corps often fails to consult meaningfully with the tribes. Tribal leaders will have a direct line of communication now into the regional office, back to the national office, to get consultation, technical assistance, and information to them. And I'd really like to thank Subcommittee Chair Napolitano and Representative Stanton for their tireless work advocating for our tribal communities. First time in a decade, significantly expands the Corps environmental infrastructure authorities and assists more communities in addressing drinking water, wastewater needs. We need major work in these areas. Communities all across America, red, blue, whatever, are suffering, and we need these tools to help them. I'd like to thank Chair Napolitano for her effort to help the Corps with flexibility, additional authorities, help them meet future water supply needs of the arid regions of this nation. We're rationing the Colorado River for the first time in history this year. Her input and advocacy also brought many of the environmental justice provisions of this bill, support for tribal communities. She's been a tireless advocate for meeting the needs of her district, her state, and the nation. Also thank Sam Graves I couldn't have asked for a better partner working on this bill. His steadfast support has made it possible. The gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Rouser, for his support and wise input on the bill before us today. Their input brought in critical perspectives. And we also had Subcommittee Vice Chair Representative Bordeaux, Georgia, who brought recreational safety concerns at local dams to our attention. Representative Williams, Georgia, supported a watershed-wide study of the Chattahoochee River. Representative Kakahale of Hawaii, an ardent advocate of Native Hawaiians, ensuring their participation in core activities, and thank the gentleman for giving us new perspectives on that. Representative Newman, Illinois, worked hard for all the Great Lakes. Representative Carter also came to the table with fresh policy project ideas to help Louisiana to deal with natural disasters, sea level rise, and severe weather events. Mr. Speaker, this is essential legislation, and I urge my colleagues to support it. With that, I reclaim the balance of my time, reserve the balance.